morning and welcome. My name is Kevin Honan. I'm the House Chair of the Housing Committee. I'm with Brendan Crichton, Senator Crichton. He's the Senate Chair. We're also joined by some of our colleagues. The Vice Chair, Joe McGonigal, is here. Representative Chris Hendricks is here. Thank you both for coming. Today we're going to hear testimony on a Boston Home Rule petition, House 4115. If anyone wishes to testify, you can sign in outside if you haven't already. We limit testimony to 3 minutes. We also accept written testimony, so feel free to submit written testimony if you would like. We also take elected officials out of turn, and today we are joined by the Mayor of Boston, who will open up the hearing and testify first. Did you want to bring the councilor up with you? Councilor Lydia Edwards, who was a sponsor of the bill down at the City Council, would like to come up as well. So we have both of you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Chairman Honan and Chairman Crichton, thank you very much. And through you to the members of the committee, thank you for being here today. For the record, my name is Martin Walsh, Mayor of the City of Boston. I'm here to testify in support of House Bill 4115, sponsored by Representative Honan from Austin Brighton. Before I get started, I just want to just talk briefly. Yesterday, we had a meeting in my office in City Hall with Sheila Dillon, Brian Golden, Joyce Lenahan, and some other folks about where we are in the City of Boston with Linkage and with IDP. And we looked at the ability for us to look at making some increases now. And we had a conversation after that with the tools that we've used in the city since 2015, with raising inclusionary development, with the Community Preservation Act, with making investments, hundreds of millions of dollars of investments into public housing by our own general fund, by the sale of Winthrop Square Garage, making investments in Orient Heights in East Boston, and in South Boston at Mary Ellen McCormick, at Old Colony Housing Development. And we're thinking about where we are, and we're at a crisis moment here. And the legislation that I'm about to testify on has no impact at all on the borders outside of the City of Boston. It's strictly a bill that deals with just the City of Boston, with the ability to use the Linkage and IDP to be able to continue to create affordable housing and protect what we have in our city. Behind us today, the council and myself, many people have been doing this work, as you know, for many, many years. They're the housing advocates, they're the tenants' rights organizations, they're the organizations that have been in these halls since I got elected in 1997 and sat in the same chairs that you sat in. These are the folks that have been pushing and fighting for many years. We're going through an incredible opportunity right now in the City of Boston, incredible building boom. We're still experiencing it, and I don't see a slowdown, at least not for 2020 and maybe into 2021. And we've seen a lot of growth and gain in our city. But what we have not seen is, we talk about this a lot, and I know you do too here at the legislature, the income inequality number has not shrunk, it's grown. The opportunities for people to live in the City of Boston has not increased, it's decreased. And the issue is the impacts that we have and the stress that we feel throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and the lack of affordable housing throughout the Commonwealth, quite honestly, is something that is a major concern. And until other cities and towns are willing to step up and help us with this, Boston's going to continue to build affordable homes. Boston's going to continue to support our tenants and support our communities. So I'm asking for support in this legislation. I also want to just briefly thank this committee, because it needs to be recognized that this committee passed the largest housing bond bill in the history of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts last session. Mr. Chairman, you led the efforts. I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for that investment. Those are important investments, because that allows us the opportunity to make sure we continue to build housing. We are at a crisis point in Boston. We are at a crisis point in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. If we want to stay competitive as a city, as a region, and as a Commonwealth, we need to figure a way to build more housing to keep people in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. As I look around the country, and I look in California, where they're making investments in infrastructure, where they're making investments in infrastructure in Austin, Texas, and out in Phoenix, Arizona, they're making those investments to create more economic opportunities for their own cities. What they're going to do, once they create those opportunities, they're going to come after our talent. So I want to be very clear on that. So I want to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to say a few words there on this. This bill would allow us to leverage Boston's strong growth to create more opportunities for housing and job training for our residents. I welcome the opportunity individually, or if you like, anytime that your officers would like to talk to us more about what we want to do here, we'll gladly help you and lay out the blueprint on what we're doing here. Some of the context about Boston's growth. As I mentioned earlier, Boston's experiencing one of the biggest building booms in the history of our city. In 2019 alone, this year, we approved over $4 billion worth of new development. At the same time, our population in the city of Boston is continuing to climb, and it's about to hit, I think it's over 700,000, but we're close to 700,000 residents. More and more people want to make Boston their home. But housing continues to be the biggest economic challenge facing the people of Boston and across our region. Not only do we need more housing to keep up with the demand, we also need more housing at price points that families can afford. And that's something that a lot of our advocates in this room are fighting for. Traditionally, we've relied on federal resources for affordable housing, but we cannot do that anymore. So I'm not even talking today about public housing. We have billions of dollars of needs in our public housing authority. We're making those investments, working with the council, and getting the money from our general fund into that, which I won't really touch upon too much right now. But it's up to our own resources. And we need to strengthen our resources and every tool that we have to be able to create more housing. This is what Boston has done since 2015. Under our housing plan, we've created over 31,000 new homes. 20% of those are subsidized affordable homes. For the first time, we're using city funds to renovate the public housing developments through our capital and sale of Winthrop Square Garage. So we're making investments in our public housing, where our most vulnerable people live. We got the Community Preservation Act passed with the overwhelming support of voters we worked with to increase the state match. I want to thank, again, the Chairman Honan for helping us in Brighton and also Brighton area with this. That was a big vote out there for this. Yesterday, we signed a home rule petition for a new real estate transfer fee. That's going to come to the legislature. I know a lot of people don't want to vote on taxes. That vote has nothing to do with taxes as far as your vote. That vote is specifically giving us the tools in Boston so that myself and the city council can work together to raise the tax on transfer fees, that money which all will go right back into housing. And today we're talking about the next step, strengthening our two biggest affordable housing tools, inclusionary development and linkage. This bill allows us to make two very important changes. First, gives us the flexibility to adjust linkage payments we require for commercial development. What we're seeing right now in the city of Boston, we're seeing a switch from residential to commercial in a lot of areas. This would allow us the opportunity to get more linkage fees. It will help us keep pace with the market so we can continue to leverage our city's growth. Just to the press that's here today, what we want to do is not put business out of business. We want to work with business to make sure that the deals that we're doing in the city are beneficial to everyone, so that when somebody builds a new building and they're able to make as much money as they can possibly make on it, the money that comes out of that project can go back in and help people to work actually in their buildings through job training and places to live. In addition to affordable housing, linkage funds also helps us with education projects and, as I mentioned, job training. These opportunities are helping Bostonians get better jobs and better careers. You're going to hear from a few people in a little while. George Opont is going to speak. He's an amazing immigrant from Haiti who received job training through our neighborhood job trust. He's now an employee at the Boston Park Plaza and a member of Local 26 apprenticeship program. He's here with his parents. He's nervous. Don't be nervous, George. You'll be fine. Gregory. I had the pleasure of hearing his story at the Neighborhood Job Trust Award we had at More Than Words this year. He is a proud Bostonian. He's proud of the opportunities that have been given to him and his family to come here and make a better life for his family. It's amazing to hear his story. You'll hear it in a little bit. He's going to talk about what this program meant to him and what it means to him. And you can take his story and multiply it by thousands of people that we're doing every day. Trin Wind is here today from our Office of Workforce Development. Second, this bill makes inclusionary development a permanent part of Boston's zoning code. It started in 2000 when IDP helped create thousands of units of income-restricted housing in the city of Boston. We strengthened the policy in 2015, which helped us create even more homes. The next step is to codify IDP in the zoning code. That way, even if we make changes and update our zoning, the affordability requirement is in place. This is an important way to make sure that benefits of our city growth is felt throughout every neighborhood. We changed it in our neighborhood, so we're seeing that expansion in our neighborhoods. We'll see more people, we'll see a crane or building going up. We'll understand that that project is helping affordable units in the city of Boston. We'll understand that that crane just doesn't represent construction jobs. That crane represents new opportunities and new life and job training programs. That crane allows us the opportunity to preserve housing in our neighborhoods. That crane does so much more than the building that is building under it. Today, we're also going to hear from Tammy Brown, a lifelong Bostonian who lives in the Beverly with her two children. The Beverly is the first fully income restricted building for families in downtown Boston in decades. With the sale, with the Big Dig and all of the benefits of that piece of property came out of that, where we created opportunities to be able to have housing inside of Boston. It was funded by revenue from the neighborhood developments. It's a great example how we can work with developers in the city, in the state. We work to make sure affordable units for our family. That was truly an inclusive project. You're also going to hear from Arlene and some other folks who moved into IDP unit in Liberty Place in Chinatown about a year and a half ago. At the end of the day, this bill is about helping residents build good lives and strong lives, and allows them the opportunity to stay in the city that they grew up in or the city that they moved into. It's about strengthening and expanding our middle class. It's about making our city as a whole more resilient. We continue to look for tools and resources to create more opportunities for residents. I want to thank the housing advocates, the city council, and the partners here. We're not asking for a handout here today. What we're asking for is an opportunity to be able to take the revenue that's made in the city of Boston and be able to put it back into the important pieces to keep our city an equitable city for all. I respectfully recommend the passage of this important bill. I thank you for all of the conversation. I'm going to turn this over to Councilor Edwards, and then afterwards we'll both take questions if you have any questions for us, if that's okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to thank the Chair Honan, members of the committee for this opportunity to testify and to continue what I think is our growing partnership in trying to deal with regional issues such as housing, transportation, and other difficult conversations that we all receive, the phone calls. We all hear from our constituents about these particular issues. So I wanted to thank you for this opportunity. I'm proud to support H4115, an act authorizing the City of Boston to limit buildings according to their use and construction to specified districts, and urge its imminent passage. This bill passed unanimously by the Boston City Council and was signed by Mayor Walsh. It modernizes Boston's authority to relative residential and commercial development. This is more than just a housing bill. This legislation advances civil rights and fair housing while making our local development processes more effective, more accountable, and ultimately more affordable for Bostonians. Specifically, it expands the city's ability to update Linkage, that's the development impact fees on commercial projects, which fund affordable housing and jobs training in Boston. Importantly, the bill also authorizes inclusionary zoning in the City of Boston. Linkage or fees on large-scale commercial development was originally enacted in Boston to the advocacy of the late Councilor Bruce Bowling. I'm proud to stand with advocates today to call for this important update. Inclusionary development requirements for affordability placed on residential development has been in place since 2000, but Boston has never received full legislative authorization for it. This means that Boston's authority to require affordable housing is based entirely on private developers seeking variances or exceptions to our zoning code, public funding, or public land. Today, Boston is rezoning. My neighborhood of East Boston is preparing for growth and change. In order to prepare and in order to provide consistent signals to development, we need to update our zoning. East Boston today sees an enormous amount of requests for variances. This frustrates both residents and developers and raises the cost of building housing. But unfortunately, it is the only way we can require inclusionary development today. I want to emphasize this point. Today, Boston's inclusionary development powers are contingent upon zoning code being out of date and distinct from other city plans or actual real estate trends. Every other community in Massachusetts enjoys the power to require affordable housing through their zoning code. Specifically, Section 9 of Chapter 48 of the General Laws gives other communities in Massachusetts a special permit provision in zoning. Boston is that exception to that rule. The City of Boston does not have that power. So today we're coming to you to ask for legislation that will take Boston from the weakest affordable housing authority to the most clearly articulated framework for inclusionary development statewide. It also requires our city to do our homework. Passing this is just the beginning of many conversations we have to have. Once this passes, we still have to go back and work with developers, work with residents, work with all stakeholders to make sure that as we update our zoning code, it is in a responsible way. We must look to, and are required in the legislation to actually look at economic data and trends. We have to look at demographic trends and fair housing trends as well. This makes our planning more accountable to all parties, most importantly to the communities that we all represent. In addition to the new detailed level of analysis we must undergo, we are also committing to greater transparency in the development process. These small provisions will build trust in our communities. The goal ultimately is to trust growth again and to believe that we can grow responsibly for all. I urge the passage of this law, and thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Councilor, and thank you also, Mayor. We appreciate you both coming up here today. We've been joined by Senator Julian Cyr, the Vice Chair of the committee.
Senator?
As important as developing new units is preserving units. So in my neighborhood, we have Babcock Towers and Warren Hall. Just wondering if your thoughts on using this linkage money to preserve units that are at risk right now?
Yeah, we'd be able to use that. I talked to Sheila Dillon, Chief of Housing, and we'd be able to use a portion of that money. And I think that, again, that goes back to tools in the toolbox. Not to use that analogy, overkill it, but it's really important that when we have expiring use, and Boston went through about 10 years ago when I was here, many of the buildings in my district, particularly the senior buildings, expiring use was up, and we had to negotiate working with the city of Boston to keep those buildings under income restrictions so that the seniors could live there. It happens frequently, so we could use the money from Linkage, the Linkage increase. We could use the money we have now, but we have the ability to raise more money for Linkage to preserve housing units.
Thank you. We've talked to Sheila and the BHA, and we know you're working on it, so I'd encourage you to continue to do so. Were there any other questions here from members? Okay, yes. Vice Chair.
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Mayor, one of the first pieces of legislation I got to pass in the city of Everett was a linkage fee because of all the development that's happening right across the, way from you, and it works. So congratulations, I commend you on this.
Well, I want to commend Everett. I mean, if you look at the sheet of affordable housing being built in the Commonwealth, other cities get credit, but Everett's right up there. And that linkage, you can see a direct correlation to more affordable housing being built. So I want to commend you for what you've been doing. Again, when I mentioned earlier, it wasn't necessarily a slight at everyone, certainly not the legislature, but we need cities and towns to step up and build more. Our lists are yesterday we had an announcement in Chinatown, and I think it was 128 units of affordable housing, 4,400 applications many years ago. Roxbury, Madison Park had 76 units of housing, 4,000 applicants. If you look at those addresses of those applicants, they're not all Boston residents. So we really need to create opportunities for housing. Our poor people have no place to go. They have no place to go. And what this legislation does, it allows us in Boston the opportunity to be able to try and build more housing for those folks. But we have to go far beyond it. I think what you did here in the legislature last year with the housing bond bill was big, and I think having more opportunities like that is important as well.
Thank you. Any further questions? Yes,
just a comment, and thank you, Mr. Mayor and Councilor. The housing crisis in this Commonwealth is really what's, affecting so many of our communities. In my neck of the woods on the Cape and the Islands, our inability to provide housing for our residents is eroding our communities a heck of a lot faster than the ocean is. And, this legislature, I think we really need to take action and really make sure that all of our towns are stepping up to provide housing. And so I'm grateful to the leadership that we have here in Boston, and the largest city in the Commonwealth, on this issue. We've got some good leadership in my neck of the woods as well, but I think that this is a real pressing issue, and so I appreciate this specific bill, but also the broader commitments around trying to advance this issue. It's probably one of the most acute in the communities I represent, and I know certainly our chairs are aware of that and really share our commitment to wanting to make sure we get something done. So just thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you both very much for coming.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you.
Next person to testify will be Representative China Tyler, who is the chair of the Boston delegation.
All right.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Chair Crichton and Chair Honan, thank you so much for taking me out of turn. And to the entire Housing Committee, good morning. I hope all is well. I'm here also in support of H4115, an act authorizing the City of Boston to limit buildings according to their use or construction to be specified districts. Again, my name is China Tyler. I represent the 7th Suffolk District in the City of Boston, and I also happen to chair the Boston delegation, which Chairman Honan was the former chair of 8 years. And so I just really want to talk about the bill really quickly. This bill does two very, very important things for Boston. The first thing is that it gives Boston the ability to adjust linkage fees for developers of commercial buildings over 1,000 square feet. The money from the linkage fee program goes to fund job training and affordable housing initiatives. And the second very important thing that this bill does is that it codifies the city's inclusionary development policy, which we all know as IDP, which will require developers who want to build 10 or more units of housing to include a certain percentage of affordable housing units, to build affordable housing in the same community, or to pay money into Boston's neighborhood housing trusts. Now, I've witnessed so many difficult planning processes with developers who want to develop in my district of Roxbury, and my constituents' needs sometimes goes unmet when it comes to that situation, and that's unacceptable. Boston is booming, and not everyone is benefiting. In fact, a lot of our residents' very dire needs are going unmet. Boston's growth is putting more and more pressure on the housing market, and driving rents and home prices are going higher and higher. At the same time that Boston is booming, we have seen nearly an increase in the number of displaced families and individuals in Boston in the past year. Last year, in 2018, over 62,000 people were homeless in the city of Boston, and that's really, really unacceptable. Boston's growth also creates opportunities for Bostonians to advance economically, but only if they can access new jobs that offer them a career ladder and a pathway to self-sufficiency. And we need job training programs to be able to make this happen. And I just really want to note that we have two very, very important programs here in the city of Boston that can benefit a great deal if this bill is passed. One is the Building Pathways program, which is a pre-apprentice program, which happens to be in my district, a training program that helps folks of any socioeconomic status get into the union, which is very important. And we also have Madison Park Vocational Technical High School, which is the only vocational tech high school in my district. And those students are amazing. If we give them an opportunity, they can be able to become self-sufficient, but we have to give them that opportunity to be able to do so. Linkage and IDP have been very, very effective and successful programs, and the flexibility to be able to change more frequently will allow for Boston to better respond to our constituents' needs. And I support the effort to be able to move this bill favorably out of committee, and I look forward to working with you all to be able to do so, and happy to take questions should you guys have any.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chair,
All
are
right,
there any
nice.
questions? None? Thank you. Appreciate it. Next person to sign up to speak will be Giancarlo Calvo. Is Giancarlo here? Okay.
Hello. I'm speaking on behalf of Councilor at Large Michelle Wu. Thank you to Chairman Crichton, Chairman Honan, and members of the committee. This is a prepared statement from the councilor herself. Thank you for the opportunity to submit testimony in support of H4115, the Home Rule petition to authorize the City of Boston to update and improve our linkage and inclusionary development policies. In the midst of a housing crisis and growing inequality, Boston and other municipalities need every tool to address growing rents and access to jobs. This Home Rule petition would enable the City of Boston to have more flexibility to fund much-needed affordable housing and workforce training, while protecting the city's ability to create and fund income-restricted housing. Both these existing programs, Linkage and IDP, have delivered significant resources to serve families across the city. However, these restrictions around updating the programs have meant Boston residents have lost out on capturing substantial resources in the building boom. This Home Rule petition would empower the City of Boston to provide more real-time solutions and accelerate our ability to connect families to affordable housing and workforce training. The Boston City Council has deliberated over these changes over a period of several years and led to a wide-ranging community coalition who represent leaders across many sectors, neighborhoods, and backgrounds. We stand united in requesting the Commonwealth and City take every step to recognize the need for resources to support solutions. We are grateful for your partnership on this and other measures to match the scale and urgency and the challenges across the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you, Giancarlo. Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Next person to testify will be Richard Giordano. Hello, Richard. Good to see you, my friend.
I wanted to hand those out because I want folks to see the picture.
Okay.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come and testify in favor of H4115, the city's home rule petition regarding linkage and inclusionary development policy. I am not going to read all of that. I simply want to focus in on the use of the inclusionary development policy to preserve existing affordable housing where the subsidies are expiring. Exactly the question the chairman asked. If you need any specifics, take a look at the second to last paragraph on the first page and then the second one over. Fenway CDC was able to purchase and save 97 units of affordable housing because of the inclusionary development policy and the work of the city of Boston, and of course all the other quasi-publics that were involved. So that picture on the front cover is the homes of 97 families who'd been living there for decades. If we did not have this program, we wouldn't have been able to purchase this property and keep it affordable. The owners, if you're familiar with the 13A program, the subsidies have ended, it's gone. The owners are free to put it up on the market. They did so, and we were able to cobble together all sorts of sources of financing. But we used inclusionary development money from two developers using their off-site requirements and also money from the general IDP fund. So if we didn't have that program, these folks would probably be out on the street right now, 97 families. It's been affordable for decades, and it could not have been kept that way without this program. And the other reason why we need to support the linkage and the IDP as the bill is requesting is that as we try to answer the housing crisis in the city, and BRA and others are looking to upzone to increase density in different neighborhoods, the IDP is triggered by zoning variances. If you don't need a zoning variance, you don't need to do anything for inclusionary development policy. If we change the zoning and allow a developer to build 30 or 40 stories in a place where you could have only built, say, 7, and they don't need a variance, then there's no IDP requirement. So what we're asking is to put the IDP in the zoning so that it will apply all along the board and will also be much stronger. And then linkage is simply, asking that the city have the authority to adjust it according to the economic conditions that we face. So that's the moral of the story. We're part of the Boston Tenant Coalition and the Coalition for Truly Affordable Housing, and Fenway CDC and all of the folks here are supporting this bill, and we hope you will too. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you for all the work you're doing on preservation. Any questions for Richard? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have a panel, Donna Brown, Shamika Moreno, Karen Chen, Corna Van, and Bing Ma.
Is it okay to start?
Donna, you can go first, yep. Wait for everybody to sit down. Go right ahead.
Hi. Chairman Honan, Chairman Crichton, and members of the committee, my name is Donna Brown. I am the co-chair of Mass Association of Community Development Corporations Boston Committee. I'm also a resident of South Boston and the director of South Boston Neighborhood Development Corporation. I'm here to testify in support of H4115, legislation which makes changes to the City of Boston's Linkage program and codifies its existing inclusionary development policy into the city's zoning code. And on behalf of MACDC's Boston Committee, I want to express our strong support for this home rule petition. MACDC represents 20 CDCs in Boston and many throughout the state. In Boston, we've collectively built over 8,000 affordable homes in the city. Our members are governed locally by residents in each neighborhood who serve on the boards of each CDC. CDCs in Boston are dedicated to long-term affordability, high-quality property management, and robust resident services. We make a strong commitment to hiring firms, contractors, and subcontractors that are owned by people of color and women, and are committed to hiring community residents and people of color for construction projects. As you know, Boston's a national leader in affordable housing, with over 1/3 of our rental housing stock reserved for people of low and moderate incomes. According to the 2018 update, the City of Boston 2030 plan, 22% of all Boston households are currently paying more than half of their income for housing because of the strong demand for housing in our city and the increase in population. In my neighborhood of South Boston, we've seen unprecedented growth and the resulting increases in rents that have led to displacement of families and of the elderly. And therefore, we firmly support this home rule petition. It will require significant resources to address the need for Boston to reach its goals of 16,000 new affordable units. This petition will help us do that by strengthening two of our most successful programs, Linkage and IDP. And as other speakers have indicated, IDP is critical to addressing both the economic diversity of an area that's under intense development, like the South Boston waterfront, but it also creates off-site opportunities to leverage those monies for affordable housing within the South Boston neighborhood. And we've used it several times to leverage affordable housing for veterans, for the elderly, and for working people. The home rule petition would give Boston the authority to incorporate IDP into its zoning code. And we need this ability so that as the city upzones in areas, the IDP will be triggered automatically through the zoning code rather than only for projects that need a zoning variance. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of the home rule petition. We stand ready to work with the committee and our legislative leadership and the administration to move this forward.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Donna. Donna, it might be appropriate at this time to have Senator Nick Collins, who's your senator, come up and speak for a moment. Did you want to testify now, Senator, or did you want to wait till the...
Sure.
All right, why don't you? Yeah, we have a panel here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, to all the advocates that are here, but particularly, Mr. Chairman, for your work in housing for a long period of time, and I appreciate your support of this bill. And I don't think there's a more important piece of legislation we'll pass this session. I know that Ms. Brown had just discussed the issues facing the community of South Boston that are reflective of challenges citywide, and how this would allow us to capture more value from development that's happening in and around the Boston area, where through the permitting process you can create, value gets created through the permitting process. And I know past in the 80s hasn't had an update where, as we've seen in the paper today, but most of us in the city of Boston have known that the interest and the value in real estate and the cost of real estate really has grown so significantly that this really allows us to benefit more significantly in leveraging resources that we don't have currently, and where we've seen dramatic increases in values and property. We haven't had that same ability. So I commend the city council. I know was earlier this hearing was testified, the mayor, along with Councilor Edwards, on behalf of the city council, in their work and some important piece of legislation that they worked on. I know recently passed, but I think, I feel like we've been in a housing crisis since I got elected in 2010, and this bill couldn't come at a better time. I think it's long overdue, and I'm grateful that a combination of city leaders, advocates, and now us at the state are taking this really seriously, because if we're going to have, such continued and dramatic growth. We need to find a way to capture more of that value and share it back with the public, and this could do that, along with, coupled with the increased strategy for the disbursement of public land to help leverage real estate costs as well. I think it would have a major impact, and, not to shift gears, but also to take the opportunity to push the advocates in the room to continue as well with members of the legislature pushing the Housing Choice Act that would have a dramatic impact on our ability to build affordable housing across the region. So as we're handling this as a city in the city of Boston, while other communities aren't meeting their obligations, it makes it even more important this legislation passes. So I ask that it passes with unanimous support in this committee, and hope that we can continue moving it forward through the legislative process.
Thank you very much, Senator, for coming and testifying. Appreciate you coming here.
Thank you. I have some testimony to submit.
Thank you. Submit it right away.
Good morning. Hi, I'm Shamika Moreno. I'm from the Coalition of Affordable Housing. I'm a resident also of Roxbury. I grew up here, and I'm now raising my 5 children here. My neighbors are going without the necessities of having to choose between utilities, food, childcare, or to pay rent. Because most of these families are raised by single mothers, a lot of these young men are turning to criminal activity to help their mothers stay afloat, which then causes the crime rate to go up in a community I was raised in myself, and my children are now being raised in. I myself have been homeless twice due to high rents. This is a tool that Boston needs. Please pass the rule petition H4115, and I thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much. Would you like to go next?
我係馬炳庭，係移民過嚟美國嘅，住喺愛丁堡街21號異地。因為我一落機嘅時間係13年落機，而家排我而家。我有個啲房屋處問佢咧，佢起碼我話要啱5年，你要我房屋，如果我要啱我5年時間咧，而家好我攞年率咯。會外咧更年階級，你美國係一個移民國嚟嘅，會咧更年階級個福利各方面都含得長長冇用，因為你到我係到廚房嘅，到廚房嘅咧，因為各種職業病都要，間質驗啊、鼻炎啊嗰啲都要嘅。但係等條例都係冇時間。你為呢個房屋，我而家你成日房醫響熱停你門，我女要有契嘅，個老虎小葉要捱，所以我希望人民呢更多議員呢，掂量香港嘅法例，我呢要呢個更多議員安樂嘅家。
My name is Bing Chang Ma. I'm a resident in Chinatown in 21 Edinburgh Street, apartment 2D. I came to the U.S. in 2013. Since I arrived in Chinatown, in Boston, really the finding housing was very difficult. I live in an apartment, a 1-bedroom apartment with my wife and my daughter, and it's $1,400 a month. And I work as a cook in a restaurant, and I work many, many hours, and we pay significant amount of income towards rent. If we want communities like Chinatown to have stable housing, we ought to increase the amount of affordable housing available to people in the community, people like me. And I have actually put in many applications in affordable housing, either through lottery programs or BHA. I have been asked to wait. And, it feels almost I won't be able to get a subsidized unit until I'm retired. So, the housing crisis is real, and I hope that the State House will do something about it and help people like me. Thank you. 你講完未？
而家呢，啲工人階級啊，要呢家係呢，至到一個房呢， 5、6個年都置埋我嗰度，因為佢就業更大問題壓力，加上咧你各方面咧，你而家嚟講你美國係移民國，好都係工人階級嘅家係啊，加上我嚟講，我身邊都係大個，要有啲少有照顧嘅。如果我係咪要個小業過，我梗係自間靚樓啦。但係我而家嚟講，攞個咧更大壓力都非常之大。嗰個壓更可能你唔能夠一年到得食嘢嘅。啊，有時老闆炒你嘅要會，係一下冇得換到換工。雖然我以前咧到落個地方咧係一停南門，而家你一停四門，我對我住5年咧個房屋一房一響咧超過停鐵門。你喺我個壓個個小業壓力唔壓力？唔係我個人，因為真係個美國波士頓嚟講，壓個一對個人係好，所以我希望你考慮哦。
So I also want to emphasize the importance of people in the community can stay in their community. And, you know, it's really for survival that people live in their communities. And I think that for me, you know, besides the fact that, you know, housing is important, but my everyday life, where my daughter go to school, you know, where we go see the doctor, and it's all important for us to stay, you know, in Chinatown. Because of that, we also seeing that in Chinatown, you know, you have a family of 2, 3, or 4 squeezed into 1 bedroom because of the rising housing costs, and that's the way, you know, for people to stay in their community. If we don't do that, you know, like a lot of other things in our lives could fall apart. And, you know, I would like to provide better for my daughter. I would like to have a bigger apartment where she actually has her own bedroom, but we're under a lot of financial or economic pressure, you know, because we know that having stable housing, meaning that I have a stable job, and we all know that rent is going up significantly faster than people's income, and so, you know, this is something that we ought to look into, find every way we can to help people in need.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Hi. My name is Karen Chen. I'm here on behalf of the Chinese Progressive Association to express the support for H4115. We believe, so the Chinese Progressive Association is a grassroots-based community organization in Chinatown. We have a membership of about 1,200. We serve about 3,000 people annually. And, you know, our mission is to improve the living and working condition of Chinese Americans and work for full equality. And one of the areas of our focus is to stabilize Chinatown by preserving existing affordable housing and increase the number of affordable housing. And then also making sure that residents have the right to remain in their homes and their community and to obtain community control and ownership of land. So in the last, since 2000, you know, Chinatown's housing stock has doubled, whereas Chinatown used to be a majority low-income housing community. And, you know, almost 2 decades later, the chart completely flipped. Now we're a majority luxury housing community. So the makeup of affordable housing in 2000 is 62.5%. And now the makeup of market rate housing in Chinatown is 52.9%. And then also, besides the fact that a lot more luxury housing, but also housing costs has gone up a lot. Today, I just looked up Kensington, one of the buildings in Chinatown that was completed around 2014. A 1-bedroom apartment, the starting rent is $3,600. And for some of the Chinatown residents like Mr. Ma, that could be their entire income for the month, or even less. So, you know, so there's a real housing crisis. In the inclusionary development policy and linkage requirement play a critical role for the city of Boston to provide affordable housing, to preserve affordable housing, and for workforce vocational training. So we need to keep programs like that. And I think it's also important for this program to be codified into the zoning code, because if it's written in the zoning code, then the IDP units can be required regardless if a building needs zoning relief or not. And then also Boston should be able to have the flexibility and autonomy to update it when it's needed so that, it's not constantly asking the state for authorization. We talked about this the mayor was in Chinatown yesterday, and we talked about all these, housing policies. It's about, the heart and soul of a city, that making sure that, Boston stay a vibrant community, and that one of the ways to do that is making sure that housing is a human right. So we really ask the state to step up to support city like Boston is doing, the best it can for to create homes for ordinary people. So thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Thanks. Good afternoon. Chairman Honan and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify on this important home rule petition. My name is Cortina Van, and I'm a resident of Dorchester. I was born and raised in Boston, and I'm here on behalf of Massachusetts Affordable Housing Alliance, MAHA, to express our strong support for House 4115. MAHA's mission is to educate and mobilize individuals and communities to break down barriers and increase affordable sustainable homeownership opportunities. Through education and civic engagement, we are committed to reducing the racial homeownership gap in Boston and throughout the state. Right now, the racial divide is stark. 44% of white households in Boston own their own homes. That figure is 29% for black households, 26% for Asian households, and just 16% for Latinos. That means our households of color are not able to stabilize our housing and build assets the same way that many of our white neighbors are doing. It also means we are being disproportionately impacted by every increasing rents, building sales, and other housing crises that result in homelessness and displacement. While the housing situation in Boston is especially bad for our Black, Latino, and Asian neighbors, we know that home prices in the city are well beyond the reach of very large fractions of all working families, as well as young professionals that our employees need to recruit and retain. This is a social and racial justice issue. It is also an economic issue. For the entire greater Boston region, we're attracting lots of jobs, but we don't have nearly enough housing that low and moderate middle income workers might take those jobs that can afford it. MAHA is going to continue to partner with the city and others to advocate for additional state and federal funding, particularly for home ownership programs. As we work at the state and federal levels, we must also adopt local policies and increase local funding for homes, and that our home buyers can afford. MAHA expects to graduate over 1,600 people from home buyer classes this year. That means every month we're adding 135 prospective first-time home buyers to the Boston housing market, where there is almost nothing that they can afford. Most of our graduates have to win a home ownership lottery or move away from the city. In many cases, our buyers have good jobs and have great credit, but they still don't qualify for market rate homes. Many cannot afford the lottery homes. We believe that households with incomes of $50,000 to $100,000 deserve a chance to sink roots in Boston, and we're working with D&D and other partners to make it possible. To accomplish our goals, the city needs the authority to adjust our local revenue sources and local policies as conditions require. This petition would give Boston authority to adjust its linkage policy as necessary to mitigate the impact of new commercial development on demands for housing and job training. I see my time is running out, so I'm trying to get to the point. I concur with everything that everyone has said. This policy, changing this policy needs to happen. We want to make sure that families are able to afford to buy, and we just need to get back to the basics of taking care of each other like we've always done and do that. And I thank the committee for the opportunity to testify today, and I just hope that we'll get that done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions for the panel? Thank you. Thank you. Councilor-elect Kenzie Bach, did you wish to testify? Don't have to wait anymore, Kenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Feel a little sheepish cutting the line, but I'm Kenzie Bach. I'm a newly elected councilor taking office January 6th in Boston. Also come from, actually I've been testifying before this committee before on behalf of the Boston Housing Authority on the public housing side, and am also proud to be on the board of the Mass Affordable Housing Alliance. Cortina just spoke on our behalf there. I think the thing I wanted to come and say today is just that this is a committee that, as I said, I've often spoken in front of on behalf of public housing, and we're really grateful for many of your leadership on that front, and especially to you, Chairman Honan. The reality is, as we all know, that the public sector in this country never stepped fully up to providing housing and has in recent decades really stepped back. And that means that when we talk about housing our low-income and middle-income neighbors in Boston, we are talking about private side solutions as well, and yet the resources just haven't been there. And I think, you know, many of us in this room have come and asked the state to help to provide more of those resources on the public side. But the reality is, if we really want to provide private partnership, we need tools for having inclusive growth and having, you know, the booming of the city actually be good for everyone. And I think Linkage was a revolutionary policy when it came in decades ago for Boston to ensure that kind of connection, but it just hasn't kept pace. And as we look at IDP and Linkage both, they're really important tools for the city to ensure that inclusive growth, and the city needs the full rein to use them. So I think I've been a supporter and cheerleader of the really broad coalition that you see in this room, pushing to update those, and am really glad, Mr. Chairman, that you filed it here this session. And I would just say that it is so much harder to get people back into our city than to keep them there. And if we lose our families, we're just not going to be able to bring that economic diversity back into the city. And so I think that's why you feel the palpable sense of urgency in this room. And so I would urge you all to give us this tool, these set of tools to keep a more inclusive city, and to just remember that that's really what a city is all about. Like, Boston isn't Boston if it becomes a playground only for people who have enough money to pay top dollar. And I think what's exciting is being able to harness the growth for our lowest income and middle income Bostonians. And one of the things I saw at the BHA was that was the frustration of seeing that when we had secured public housing resources, we then still had these growing wait lists because our families that were doing a little bit better didn't have a path to that next rung of the housing ladder. And our IDP units really help us provide that missing rung. So I would just want to say that I strongly support this bill. I join many future colleagues on the council in feeling the same way. I'm very grateful to the chairman for filing it, and would urge its swift passage. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor-elect. Questions? Okay. The next group, there's another panel coming up. Gregory Opont, Tammy Brown, and Arlene Inthrath.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me here today. I'm here to speak in support of this important legislation and share our city-funded job training programs have helped me get where I am today. My name is Gregory Stanley Opont. I was a biology teacher in Haiti. In 2010, after the earthquake, I came to the United States. Today, I'm a proud Boston Park Plaza Hotel houseman. Thanks to ESOL and job training programs funded by the city. When I arrived in the United States, I felt lost. I didn't speak English, and that made it difficult to get job. I studied English at ABCD in Mattapan, and then joined BEST program, training program for carriers in the hospitality industry. Both city-funded programs. I'm grateful to BEST for providing me resources and job training to get quality hospitality job and start my new career. I learned how to clean a room without hurting my back. I learned about hotel branding. I got CPR certified. Now I can do an interview. I know how to introduce myself, how to talk about myself, and how to ask questions. After graduation, the Park Plaza Hotel hired me, and that changed my life. I'm very happy to work in one of the greatest hotels in Boston. I consider my hotel as my second home. I have learned that here in America, your relationships with people are the most important thing. People are more valuable than material things, and now, with my job at Park Plaza, I have the most important thing. I'm now a local 26, and as a part of my benefit, I continue to study English at BEST. Every day I try to challenge myself. I want to continue to learn and work in different positions in the hotel. I love it. Thank you to everyone who helped me get here, especially funders like City to Boston, the City of Boston Neighborhood Jobs Trust. I hope that others benefit from this program as I have. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, everybody. I'm Airline Inthirath, and I'm very grateful to be here. I live at 660 Washington, and to really get into it, I was in a relationship for 13 years. So I had another person to help me with rent, right? So when I left that relationship, I needed a place to go, and being born in Brighton, I am a true Bostonian. Like, Boston is my home, and I love it so much. When I found the program that helped me find this space, it changed my world, and it made me feel really secure. And now I live in a building where I feel safe, I feel comfortable. I have 2 cats. The vet is 3 blocks down from me. I walk them there, and it's helped my quality of life. And I don't drive, so I take the T everywhere, and it's just been something that has changed my life. And that's really all that I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tammy Brown. I'm a mother of 2, and I work as a medical auditor. I'm a longtime resident of Boston, Massachusetts, and I'm also one of the fortunate recipients of the Beverly Street Lottery. How has this affected my life? I would say absolutely for the better. Since moving to the Beverly, I've been able to enjoy living in a more centralized and accessible location within the city. That's a game changer. I can walk to the grocery store. I can walk to the theater. My son can walk to school, which is great. I have direct access to the MBTA orange and green lines, TD Garden, and downtown shopping. The stress of whether I can afford a place for myself and my family is no longer on the forefront, and I can reside my energy and thoughts to other yet equally important matters, such as how will I choose to live rather than where I'm going to live. And although I consider myself blessed and grateful for this opportunity, if we're honest with ourselves, the truth is affordable housing shouldn't be a privilege. It should be a right. And in part is fundamental to the healthy evolution of a world-class city such as Boston. The importance of these types of initiatives are immeasurable when it comes to the future of our city. And with the proper cultivation of such values will make it possible for many more. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any questions? Thank you. Okay. The next people to sign up Amy Nishman and Ralph Shirley. Thank you. You can go right ahead.
Good morning, and thank you to the committee. My name is Ralph Shirley, a proud graduate of Building Pathways and a proud member of Plumbers Local 12. I'm here today on behalf of the trade unions and Massachusetts AFL-CIO. I'm here to share why job training matters. I grew up in Grove Hall. I'm married with 3 children. Before Building Pathways, I had suffered some hardship, and I was only making about $12 an hour. It was tough to make ends meet. It was tough to keep oil in the tank during the wintertime. I got the skills in the Building Pathways to get myself into a trade union. Because of Plumbers Local 12, I'm able to make fair wages. My whole family has health care, and I'm sure you guys know how important that is with little kids. Yeah? We can afford a home. We believe in good jobs and good homes for everybody. Building Pathways in the unions have changed so many lives, have saved so many lives. That's why Building Pathways, the building trade unions, and the Massachusetts AFL-CIO fully endorse this bill. Thank you for all your efforts, and thank you for your compassion.
Thank you very much, Ralph. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Priscilla Williams, and I'm here today because I'm a double beneficiary of the Linkage Funds program. I currently reside in the Flats on D in South Boston Seaport area across from the lawns, and I got into the Flats on D in 2015 through a housing lottery when I wasn't even looking, but I was fortunate to move in through there after staying in a shelter for about 3.5 years with my child from 2011. So I'm very fortunate to have benefited from access to affordable and desirable housing. I'm also here to really testify about the efficacy and the benefit of participating in the YMCA Training Inc. Program, which I graduated from in 2011. The success of or having funding for these programs have greatly contributed to my successes over the last couple of years. I want to thank you guys for the opportunity to testify, and I urge you guys to immediately approve and increase the linkage fee so that others can participate in programs like YMCA Training Inc. and the Jobs Training Alliance. And many of you may be skeptical or resistant to acknowledge the impact of these programs that they're having on graduates, but I am here to provide testimony that the YMCA Training Inc. has profoundly changed my life, has continued to shape my professional desires and trajectory. I currently work for the Boston Housing Authority as a resident capacity program coordinator in support of the elderly disabled portfolio. So as many of you have mentioned, the Boston Housing Authority is committed to preserving housing and providing resources and programming to Within the first month of attending the program at YMCA Training Inc., they demonstrated their commitment to both me and their mission. There was a problem with my welfare benefits, and they offered a T-Pass to allow me to remain in the program and to ensure success in graduation. I'm one of the thousands of residents who have maximized the opportunities afforded to me by graduating from the YMCA Training Inc. Many of my colleagues were tax-paying citizens prior to being faced with homelessness or sudden job loss. Participating in these programs has allowed us a leg up and an opportunity to better navigate the terrain. Many other graduates were able to secure employment for the first time. All of this was made possible by the commitment and funding to the Job Trust Alliance in partnership with state leaders and the legislator. Since graduation, I've completed my bachelor's, a double master's, and I'm working to further equalize the playing field for others. I want to thank you for the time to testify and strongly encourage you to approve the linkage.
Hi, my name is Amy Nishman. I'm here from JVS Boston, and I represent the Job Training Alliance, a group of 25 nonprofit job training providers. Thank you, Chairman Honan, Chairman Crichton, and the members of the committee for having us here today to testify in support of H4115. I'm especially grateful also to Mayor Walsh and his administration and the members of the Boston City Council who we've met with many times and worked on this. Thank you also to Chairman Honan for filing the bill here. While this legislation makes adjustments to both the IDP and linkage programs, and I believe that access to affordable housing is an important tool in helping all Bostonians reach self-sufficiency, I'm going to focus today on the jobs linkage program. While linkage is often thought of as an affordable housing program, there is a portion of the linkage fees that fund job training programs in the city of Boston. Linkage funds remain vital to funding job training programs in the city of Boston. Today, there remains close to no federal money available for job training in the Commonwealth, and a very small amount of dedicated funds at the state level through WCTF. Unfortunately, there's a misperception that job training is not effective and a poor use of the city's resources. This is absolutely not true of the job training provided by community-based organizations in the Job Training Alliance and all those who receive linkage funding. To ensure our success, in fact, the way that we're funded is that we receive half of our money upfront to cover operating expenses, and the other half we earn placement by placement, ensuring successful joining in the workforce of our participants. A few years ago, the JTA commissioned a large-scale impact study that came back with remarkable results on the efficacy of community-based organizations' job training programs and our results. We know that we're highly effective, and we know this because we have strong employer connections, we provide wraparound supports that you heard Priscilla talk about, and we do labor market analysis, so we only develop job training programs that lead to quality jobs. The recipients of the job training programs, which are selected through an open and competitive RFP process run by the city, also tailor their services to populations facing unique barriers to employment: people with disabilities, older workers, single parents, immigrants, returning citizens, and homeless veterans. After job placement, graduates of these programs earned an average wage of $15.37 an hour, with 76% earning benefits as well. Impressive results for these target populations. The program also helped contribute to an estimated 70% decrease in participants' use of public assistance, while helping the Commonwealth generate revenue through their earned income taxes. The Job Training Alliance is proud to utilize job linkage funds to bring those with barriers to employment into the Boston job market. In this tight labor market, where employers are desperate for talent, there are Boston residents who, with the support of job training, can fill those current vacancies. This is great for the economy, for the business community, and for all the Boston residents who want and deserve economic opportunity. I urge you to favorably report out H4115. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Again, anyone who wishes to submit written testimony can do that as well. The last person to sign up to testify is Michael Kane.
Thank you, Chairman Honan and Chairman Crichton. My name is Michael Kane. I'm the director of the Mass Alliance of HUD Tenants. We organize tenants in the expiring use housing that Chairman Honan mentioned earlier, and we're very concerned about the potential loss of additional units. It's very important to get this home rule petition passed. We really appreciate your leadership in filing it. There's some urgency in Brighton, as you know, in Warren Hall and Babcock Towers. Getting these additional resources will help with Warren Hall if we can get the attention of the large New York owner that still won't talk to people, but getting the resources together is critical. It did work for the tenants at Newcastle Saranac. It's a 13A building in the South End. Rich Giordano mentioned earlier. The tenants there led that fight. I brought the Fenway CDC and Rick Henkin in to buy the building, and a $20 million IDP grant. The tenants testified to get that was critical to make that deal work. It's a similar building called Burbank Gardens in the Fenway, where these resources were also helpful. And the principle is to try to tap into the enormous wealth that is being built in Boston. The original idea for this came from Copley Place in Tent City. There was a linkage commitment for that development, $37 million that eventually built Tent City. Without that, it wouldn't have happened. And that was the model for the original linkage ordinance. So getting this codified, more permanent is really critical. We appreciate your support.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Michael was the last person to testify. Thank you, Mike. Did anyone else wish to testify? Okay. Seeing no one wishing to testify, the hearing is closed. The public. Now we're going to go into executive session. Okay. At this time, the committee will take action on the bill presently before the committee. The committee recommends a favorable report for 4115.
So moves.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. So that bill is reported out favorably.